Hi. So I recorded this on the 4th of July. Yay, America! Woo! And it led to all sorts of technical issues. So there will be times in the recording when the video goes out, and I'll put a proper designation for when that happens, as well as there are times when the audio will seemingly duplicate in on itself, and that's not me riffing on the themes of the movie, that's just a mistake. So please bear with me, and thank you. Hey guys, welcome back to Pillbox Movies. I'm Hank, and today we're going to be watching the 2022 psychological horror film, Men. This is a film by director Alex Garland. Alex Garland you may know from Ex Machina, Annihilation, The Beach maybe, and one of my actual favorite films, Never Let Me Go. Men stars Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear as a cavalcade of men who are harassing her on her visit to a small English village. Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. And before we get started, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. Okay, we have the same opening. Based on what I've seen from the trailers, we have the same opening as Antichrist. Yeah, I mean, take what you will of Alex Garland's, storytelling, but I do like his developed visual style, though it does ape a little bit, Lars von Trier. I don't know. I'm surprised to say that I'm watching a filmmaker do things more bluntly than Lars von Trier. So it's literally the same setup as Antichrist. What are you gonna do? For people who are scared that Antichrist is the most shocking, grotesque movie ever made. I mean, but if you're too freaked out by the prospect of it, you could always watch Men instead. We also have a stranger goes into the old town kind of setup with such stuff as the Wicker Man, for example. And in terms of Rory Kinnear playing multiple characters, I'm reminded a lot, of course, of another movie that Jessie Buckley, or another filmmaker who featured Jessie Buckley, Charlie Kaufman. But another movie that I'm thinking about that Charlie Kaufman directed was Anomalisa, where the central character, played by David Thewlis, suffers from Fragoliac syndrome, I think it's called. And hence, faces are unrecognizable to him, or he sees every face as the same face. We got an Eve thing going on? Okay. I wouldn't just pick a random person's apple tree, but whatever. Wonder if it has any thematic comparisons.
Harlow, yes?
Harper, yes.
Harper.
Jeffrey.
And Kinnear you may or may not recognize as having one of the cushiest jobs in Hollywood, the man in the chair for the Daniel Craig Bond films. And Kinnear you may or may not recognize as having one of the cushiest jobs in Hollywood, the man in the chair for the Daniel Craig Bond films. Some big fireworks.
And, will it just be you staying? Or...
Yeah, it's just me.
Where's hubby?
It's an interesting way to write that line, because it is kind of a stock line.
He asked about James, actually.
What do you mean he asked about James?
I'm just going to have to get used to it.
I like the little bit of red reflection in his eyes, reflecting back the red room that she's in. That's a nice detail. The haziness, I'm like...
You're not divorcing me.
I like it all right.
You're divorcing how I've been. We made promises, Harper, in a church.
In a church, huh? I wonder if this is... will actually focus on the religious aspect of that promise.
I'll kill myself, so you will have to live with it. On your conscience.
I am interested in this kind of haziness that Garland and the cinematographer are employing as a device for this movie. Kind of looks like Guillermo Gismond, but it also looks like Bertolucci. I mean, Bertolucci and Vittorio De Sica definitely with the red room, red-orange room. reminiscent of The Conformist. At least when Garland steals, he steals from, like, you know, good directors. Just, the color grading is a bit too punchy for my taste, but I get that they're going for a specific look. Like a hyper-real kind of look. And it is nice to see green in a movie. You don't really see, like, a verdant green in too many movies in American or British films right at the moment. And another aspect I really like, you know, say what you will about Garland one way or the other, but in terms of the fine-tuning, the subtler aspects, the not most pronounced aspects, I do like how much he incorporates the natural, so to speak, in his movies, whether they be sci-fi, whether they be horror. He does have a fascination with how human beings interact with the natural world, and how the natural world may be taken as a benevolent or as a powerful, overwhelming, inhuman presence. Characters in Garland's works buffer up against nature in sometimes cruel and sometimes inaffectionate, but sometimes deeply human ways. Okay, an idea of an echo, of a reflecting or replying voice. Ooh, you could hear it just extend out a little bit more than is natural. And you see a little shadow moving in the distance. It's great. Whether he takes it from other directors or has derived it from his own personal experiences, you got to appreciate Garland's, like, appreciation of symmetry. Symmetry as, like, a bizarre manifestation, as an outlier in nature. Doppelgangers. Duplicates. See that a lot in Annihilation. Of course, see that with the facsimile of human intellect and Ex Machina. You see it with the actual clones in Never Let Me Go. Garland loves his doubles. He loves his fractalizations, his fractals. Did this movie begin with? This movie began with the dandelions. Yeah, this one had all of the pollen blowing in the wind. Maybe to do with the idea of doublings again, of, like, seedlings, that they're all spun from the same, like, from the same plant. Here I'm wondering if they'll do a In the Mouth of Madness shot with just a guy approaching from the background.
Hey, a couple of things.
Yeah, there he is. Good for Rory Kinnear, you know? Good for him. Going balls out.
And here we have a generously proportioned living room. Open wood fire.
I like how long they're letting this play out.
Look, check out the view of the... I'll call you back.
Police car has been dispatched. Please stay on the line.
I am staying on
And the cop is going to arrive, and it's going to be Rory Kinnear.
I'm scaring you.
Yeah, you are.
You scare me. As you understand that. As you make yourself into the fucking victim, you scare me.
Look, I don't want...
Okay, we might take that as an indication of perhaps where this might be leading. Ooh. She didn't necessarily fall the right way, but that's not the important thing.
Kate, let's get him up.
Oh, my friend.
So you don't know who he is?
Well, he wasn't carrying any ID, that's for sure. Oh, Cotswold Woods, with the old railway line. Yep, that's probably where he was sleeping.
Railway line. Okay. She might be asking her about the woods because there's a secret facility there that's creating clones or whatever, if this is going to go in a very sci-fi direction.
Just glad you're nearby.
Me too.
And a bit more of the surreality of feeling like outsized, of everything being a bit larger than you'd expect it to be. Is this a pregnancy narrative? Because I don't want that. I really don't care about it. I don't know. I don't want to hear Alex Garland's thoughts on pregnancy. On women's anxieties around pregnancy. It's just not the right time for it for me personally. I mean, broad strokes, I'm sure this is about like the tense relationship, battle of the sexes, if you will. The relationship of violence between men and women.
Because whatever you say, whatever you do, you will never, ever see me again. Now get them. Fuck out!
It was a nice sync up to the music. Oh, that's weird.
Play game.
I hate that. Ugh.
Hide and seek.
That was a bad idea.
I bet you
Really
could do
shouldn't have gone the whole way with that.
Is the lady alone? No, I want to play a game with her.
She's told you perfectly clearly she doesn't feel like it. Do apologize. Samuel is a deeply troubled boy.
Is this an issue of, like, does she have a similar condition as Michael in Anomalies? Does she have Fragoliac syndrome? Because I really doubt it. I doubt that Alex Garland would watch a Charlie Kaufman movie and think, I'll use the same idea as a Charlie Kaufman movie from, like, 6 years ago.
You're tormented.
Because he'd be eaten live.
He hit me. He pushed his way into the flat upstairs, went to their balcony, tried to climb down to ours, but he
slipped.
He slipped.
Fell.
Or
Jumped.
Or let himself go.
I think you need to be understood. And I do understand.
Whoops. Nope.
I can fully imagine it must be dreadful for you. You must wonder why you drove him to it.
Why, I didn't drive him to it.
Didn't you?
Might it be true that if you'd given him the chance to apologize, he'd still be alive?
Fuck off.
So my takeaway is that Garland is saying these things are wrong. I would be interested if he were taking a more nuanced approach. Not that I'm saying that I want those arguments to be correct, but that I would like to see a presentation of these characters where it wasn't so obviously black and white. Some more Antichrist. Some much, much more Antichrist. Maybe a message about how misogyny is spread through pollination. And the wind that blows the pollen is religion. Interesting.
Absolutely not.
I've got it. I've got it. Please.
Franklin, money's no good here.
And how, you know, these displays of chivalry also reinforce the patriarchal hierarchy. A patriarchal hierarchy.
You heard about that business at your rental?
My rental? What business?
Yeah, intruder on the property.
They have him now. So.
Had him. Had to release the bugger about an hour ago.
Boy.
What? He followed me out of the woods, then tried to break into the house.
Well, if you see him again, give us a shout.
Since it's a sense of community you don't get on other holidays.
That house was the one thing that you wanted for yourself, what you chose as a place to heal. And now you have to give it up because of some motherfucking no.
Because of men 2022. I don't know why, it's a weird mix. Like, the intruder aspect wouldn't upset me in a movie. It's the fact that the intruder is nude that is upsetting to me. It's a weird, like, mix of things. Okay, it's the police officer, then that's fine. That's like a regular intruder. What are cops if not the intruder of our lives?
Has he come back? Why aren't you replying?
That's odd. That is odd. underneath the apple tree as well is a continued religious imagery. You can't take that, obviously, from Antichrist. You trying to stir up some shit, Alex Garland? A little shit? Maybe you were stealing that, obviously, from Charlie Kaufman. We get the Get Out shot now. Oh, home invasion, another home invasion movie, famous home invasion movie, obviously. Straw Dogs.
You poor thing. So sorry, old girl.
And of course, he designated as female before snapping its neck.
Jeffrey?
It's better.
Interesting. I am interested to see how this kind of wraps itself up. If it chooses to go, you know, the psychological bent, or if it chooses to go the science fiction bent. I'm guessing from the displays of like the pollens that it's gonna have a sci-fi twist to it.
Look here.
But there are like qualms I would have about that.
Out there, I don't know
like
what
if
you think you're playing at, but
they're all clones or something, she would
well with
like
me.
recognize them as being similarly looking, right? But if it's like just like the psychological bit, like it's in her head, that would be like
seems to me like they might have got
kind of unsatisfying. Sound of a bird. Sound of a bird. And the apple tree. Birds and the apple tree. He's trying to grow like a plant out of himself. Now she's gonna transform into one of them. I hope she doesn't get pregnant. And give birth to another one of them. I'm more perplexed than anything. Maybe, like, you know, there are some viewers who think that this is too obvious and too overstating its themes. I'm missing out on a lot of that currently. I'm under the impression that Garland wanted to stay ahead of the audience as much as possible, so I'm getting a little bit lost as to like what the story of this is. Creates a tree. The blood splatter creates roots of a tree. That guy's whole hand. Crying shame. Maybe it's like a fungal network? Like a hive mind at World's End?
You really hurt me.
And that's funny. It is similarly to what happened with her and James.
Stay away.
He's blaming her for an injury that he inflicted upon himself.
Hurt me again. It'll be the last chance you get.
Also, how many red rooms does this cottage have? I don't remember it being furnished so red. She's rolling around in the room in her mind of when her husband killed himself. Although it was like an orange, you know, whatever. It's close enough. I'm in an interesting spot right now where she's seeing all these men
in the loins.
Reproduce in front of her. Reappear in front of her, but we're meant to believe that she doesn't see them as being all similar, so it doesn't have the same kind of impact, because to her these are just like random townsfolk showing up again, all with the same wounds. Unless they have all looked the same to her this entire time and she just hasn't remarked on it, which would certainly be confusing. And the split hand thing is mimicking the
what the fuck are you? A swan.
A swan? Like a double helix, like in Annihilation.
I have pictured you. I have decided that you are an expert in carnality.
This can't just be a movie about men and the violence that men inflict on women, can it? That would be so
exist in my mind.
Simple.
This is your power.
Almost comically simple. While blaming the woman for that violence, suggesting that they've manifested it somehow.
You are singing to me.
And reflections, mirroring, again and again and again and again.
This slit. This. What is this?
Still, after all this, I think he's a nicer guy than James Bond. It's a nice image. She has a penetrative, he has a receptive. She's just gonna keep running. Yeah, it's fractalizing out again. These different but the same stories of violence against women. Does he have the hand? You gotta check to see if he has the hand.
Where's Marley?
That motherfucker stole my car. I mean, I did not expect that. Nice subtle lighting changes. Bringing up the sky. It's a giant slit in the sky. That's disgusting. That was a great practical effect. I love that. I hope that that stunt woman was actually running away from that car in that shot, and they didn't just splice it together, because that was a brilliantly done stunt. I hope that wasn't a composite shot. Some sort of ancient pagan god of fertility, of bounty, of the spring. It's the May Queen. Love to see a good leg snap in a movie. Second movie I watched today with an ankle twist. He's giving birth because she penetrated him. I told you I didn't want to see a pregnancy movie from Alex Garland, but I guess it's fine if the guy's doing it. I'm put in a strange spot, because, like, this should be, like, disturbing as, I guess, like, Annihilation is disturbing. But it almost feels like it's, like, haha funny. Like, it feels like Inside Number 9. Like, weird to the point of being, I don't know, just a vibe, I guess. I really wish we had access to Harper's mind a little bit more while this is going on. Like, where she's placing this is happening. Like, is this a psychedelic event for her? Is this happening in real life? Is it metaphorically happening to her? Because the way it's being presented, it feels metaphorical. But it's hard to truly appreciate if that's also what Harper is experiencing, if this is a metaphorical, psychological, psychedelic experience, or if this is like really happening, that a guy just gave birth to another guy to another guy in front of her, because that would be even in comparison to the other things that have happened to her over the course of this evening, that'd be weird. I can't help but think of Norbit. You get the best part of the turkey. It's ass. Okay, I like that one. Why'd you do this to me? Well, if they hadn't cast Black Papa Esedu as the husband and Rory Kinnear as the bunch of other men, I think
Look at me, Harper.
This like self-replicating mitosis kind of imagery about the men would have been a little bit less confused.
Free by an iron railing.
Oh, that's right. His hand was pierced. I should have realized that. That was the connection.
Internal organs crushed.
His hand was pierced by the railing, just like the men's hand was cut by the knife.
What is it that you want from me?
Your love.
Yeah.
Love is what we came here for.
Oh, she's pregnant.
You say it's very hard.
I actually don't want to come down too hard on this because I don't understand it. There's like a surface level idea, I think, being expressed that like dudes are bad, that men are bad, and I got that message and continue to get that message. I don't know if that exactly fits in with Garland's like whole thing. Like I don't know how that fits with, I'm thinking of this in Annihilation specifically, where Annihilation made a very not definitive, but a very clear statement at the end about moving on from trauma and this couple that has been alienated from each other, how this traumatic event kind of forces them to bond with each other. And while I'm not saying that male-female bond is the intrinsic message that Garland wishes to express, for the most part I think he searches for connection as a defining message or a defining human event over trauma in a lot of his work. And so taking this at face value as men are destructive and bad and create a system and a cycle in which they blame and enact violence on women, and the only thing that women can do within that cycle is appease and satisfy them or placate them. I don't know if that really falls in alignment with how I conceptualize Garland as a filmmaker. Although I guess that would be more in tune with like Ex Machina, which I think personally is kind of one of his weaker works, but is, satisfactorily cynical and satisfactorily doom-saging, and the significance of her friend or her female lover or her female partner being pregnant. I'm not sure what that leads to. So yeah, I don't know. I did, not to say that I really liked aspects of this, because I was okay with a lot of aspects of this, but I appreciate aspects of this, the attempts of the wizardry of casting one actor as multiple roles. That's fun in a way, I guess. The body horror towards the end, while I don't think was scary or repulsive personally to me, at least is kind of signature for Garland of a type of horror that he's interested in, of duplication, of replication, of mitosis. But something that's been present in his other works that in this was a little bit of too much of a fever pitch for me is just how referential it seemed to other directors' works. So strongly did you feel the Lars von Trier in this and the Antichrist in this, and so incredibly strong was the Anomalisa and the Charlie Kaufman in this, and in some ways I guess that I'm thinking of Ending Things. And a bit of the Tarkovsky connection again, and a bit of the Straw Dogs, a bit of the Wicker Man going on. I'd be fine with Garland drawing from so many different points of inspiration if he was using it to express a kind of singular or personal story, and I just didn't get as much of a sense of the personal in this that I have in others, but maybe my opinion will change. Yeah, I think the messaging of kind of one-dimensionality of the men, of the similar traits of the men, is confused a little bit by having her husband be played by Papa Essiedu, and I get that it's colorblind casting, but I think for a film that has an entirely white cast except for the husband, that, I think that creates a different dynamic that the film chooses not to explore, but it chooses to affirm a different dynamic where the character of James is viewed only through his masculinity and not through his race. And I get that's not something that Garland would necessarily consider not being a person of color, but I think it kind of confuses the question of otherness that's happening, that the specific otherness of this movie is Harper as a woman. I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know. I'm searching for the deeper movie, the deeper themes inside of this, and I'm at a loss right now, because otherwise it's just a bunch of references to other movies that explored their themes more personally and more intensely and more artistically. So yeah, I gotta think about this. Hey, so it's been a couple weeks, and I figured I would just clarify or solidify some of the remarks I made earlier. Having some time to process it, I think the movie takes the approach of really telling the internal story of Jessie Buckley's character, of Harper, and I guess I didn't really see it from that perspective, or I wasn't feeling it as much from that perspective upon the first watch. I kind of took it as a narrative that was spooling out, that was characterizing the different ways in which men display misogyny towards women, or violence towards women, and it is that narrative. I do want to clarify, that's in the movie, but I think, at least from my perspective, what I got from it upon review is that it's a movie that's more stuck inside of the head of Harper, that it's really from her perspective, and it's taking this internal feeling she has of repressed guilt, of internalized misogyny, of the feedback loop of misogyny and guilt, and expressing it in an external way with the clones and with the replications and with the different men, in sort of way aping the apple tree and whatnot. I think this is a retelling of the Adam and Eve story from the perspective of Eve, a story of first sin, of first knowledge, and while that is perhaps a misogynistic story. I think it's really telling it from the perspective of Eve, the experience of being designated, of being blamed as the root cause of first sin, especially in a framework. Eve, in the story of Adam and Eve in the garden created by God, tempted by Lucifer, Satan. I'm not really sure what the actual story is in that. Tempted by Satan. Eve is blamed as the principal actor and the principal party responsible for the creation of sin, for the knowledge of sin, when there are all these other male actors around her. There's Adam, who also took a bite from the apple. There's Satan tempting her to eat the apple or the fig, or the what's the historical? I think it's a fig, right? Eat from the fruit. Or God himself creating the garden and the temptation in the first place. And so I think that resolves a lot of issues for me in terms of what directions the narrative is taking, and how it can be treated more as a psychological piece than as like a literal piece or a science fiction piece, and the issues of the men all having the same face and her not really acknowledging it. I can let that go. It's like an Hour of the Wolf sort of thing. It's like Ingmar Bergman psychological interior headspace kind of thing. I still do have my issues with the casting and the kind of blasé way that Garland approaches race in the casting of his films. This is like not a huge issue outside of the people who kind of recognize it, but Garland has had previous run-ins with casting roles that were people of color as white actors and whatnot, and I think in some way, perhaps consciously or not, Mena tries to rectify this situation. I do think that the casting of men is an attempt at sort of correctional casting, colorblind casting, but I think it doesn't really think through some of the implications of it. Really, my biggest gripe with it is that if this story is supposed to be spun out of Harper's trauma of her guilt from the incident between her and her husband James, played by Papa Asiedu, then it is weird for me, personally, that her guilt is externalized as this character played by Rory Kinnear of The Many Men, that I know it's just because, Rory Kinnear was probably cast either first or second in this movie, and this movie was made on the basis of Rory Kinnear and Jessie Buckley's acting ability, but it kind of assumes a default whiteness, a default race of people that she could go to this town, this village, and all the men would be white, and that would be normal because white is normal, not white is the default. And that would be fine if her husband wasn't cast as a black man. Like, if this is stemming from a root trauma she has with an interaction she had with her husband, regardless of whether or not she's faced systemic misogyny her entire life and internalized misogyny from white men, from men of color, regardless, the externalization of that guilt that she feels over that traumatic event, I don't think would take the form of a white guy. That's my principal issue with it. And so I think my feelings for Men has kind of solidified over the past few weeks. I don't necessarily think that I think any better of it as a movie, but I think it makes more sense for me now. And while I do agree that sometimes it takes itself too seriously, or perhaps Garland thinks he's telling a more profound message, or a message that his audience hasn't heard before a bit more than he actually is, I do think that he has an eye for an idiosyncratic eye for imagery, for what is interesting to him, for replication, and for reflection in his movies. And I probably ended up cutting this from the actual video that I'm publishing, but I had this kind of idea of Garland conceptually as this storyteller who likes taking the story of men and women and how they smash together to create a new hybrid form, a chimera, if you will. That men and women are like two aspects of the same creature, the same primal creature that's been separated by ego or by society or by systemization or by modernization, whatever it may be, and that trauma, huge acts of violence and brutality smash them together, and they resolve a new human form out of that conflict. I think you see that a bit in the stories of bonding or merging that happen in what I see in some of his movies, like the bond that's created between the clones in Never Let Me Go. I do think that there is a bonding that occurs in Ex Machina, for example, that Ava is not solely a female android or is not solely female or an android, but that she's actually an amalgam of her female essence, but also a reaction and internalization of the misogyny or the brutality enacted against her by Domhnall Gleeson and Oscar Isaac's characters, that the hybrid that emerges from that experience has taken the lesson of distrust and suspicion that these men have performed on her or have cast against her. And I think that Annihilation is probably the most blunt with this, that Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac's characters both encounter this trauma of this supernatural, super worldly event, this superhuman event, and emerge out of it on the other side, genetically altered beings. The past version of themselves might even be obliterated at this point, and a new genetic form, a new species has been created, and that species' final act in the movie is to embrace with its other counterpart. And so I think in some way that story of hybridization, of synthesis, is what's happening between James and Harper. And I think that's really hard. That's a really hard story to kind of take in a story that's so much about misogyny and about violence against women. But it's the story of how Harper is transformed by this experience, by the guilt she feels over her husband's death and the hatred she feels from men that has occurred throughout her life, and that has reached a fever pitch with her husband, that she is transformed by that experience and she's activated anew by it. She's turned into a different person and learned to accept it or cope with it. And that kind of revelation, that kind of rebirth from that pit of anxiety, perhaps is what will help her, for example, with the pregnancy of her friend, whether or not that's her friend or her lover, be able to have less anxiety about that childbirth and about whether or not that eventual child will become a man who hates women or a woman who is hated by men, and she can help bring her lessons to bear with that newborn. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Men. Again, I don't think it's like the greatest movie ever. It might be my second least favorite Garland of what I've seen, but I do still really appreciate the imagery and the je ne sais quoi. There's a very, very particularly Garlandishness of it, even if that's very still Lars von Trier-ish and very Tarkovsky-ish and very all sorts of ishes. Like, it is kind of ish, but, and while it's not my favorite kind of ish, it is still a little bit my kind of ish, or an ish that I can get with. So yeah, that was Men 2022. A whole lot of words to say about a movie that I don't really even particularly love, but if you love it, let me know about that. Let me know in the comments, and yeah, tell me about some of your favorite Alex Garland stuff. Please don't plague me with comments about like Dan Olson's videos or Sean's videos. I've seen them. I know the interpretations. It's great if you vibe with those interpretations. Just don't comment like I don't know what those interpretations are, because I do. Yeah, that was Men 2022. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. And until next time, keep watching good movies.